The sun dipped low over Joshua Tree National Park, casting long, jagged shadows across the sand and rock formations. The wind whispered through the spindly branches of the park's iconic trees, carrying a dry, almost metallic scent that hinted at the desert's harshness. Ranger Alex Moreno adjusted the brim of his hat and scanned the horizon.
Ever wondered where you really come from? Not the stories, but the science. On this channel, we decode real DNA, uncover lost ancestries, and bring ancient genomes to life through cinematic storytelling. If that excites you, subscribe for weekly insights. Like the video to support science-based history, and drop a comment. Your questions help guide what we explore next.
Another evening patrol, he thought. Another stretch of quiet trails, the kind that always felt slightly too empty for comfort. His radio crackled, the voice cutting through the silence. "Alex, we've got a situation near Lost Palms Oasis, possible trespassing, and there's a faint report of something unusual." The words came from his colleague, Ranger Lena Ortiz. Alex frowned. Lost Palms Oasis was a remote area, miles from the main trailhead. Most tourists didn't venture that far, and those who did were usually seasoned hikers. "Copy that, Lena. I'll check it out," he replied, already mentally mapping the route. As he hiked, memories of an older, unsolved case crept into his mind. 5 years ago, a tourist couple, Vera and Clayton Peston, had vanished somewhere in the park. Their disappearance had haunted the rangers for months, triggering endless searches, desperate calls from family members, and the kind of frustration that sticks with you long after the sun sets. No trace was found. Until today, perhaps. The desert stretched endlessly, a landscape that could seem both welcoming and lethal in equal measure. Alex passed familiar rock formations, each one etched with the scars of weather and time. Somewhere among these formations, human mistakes had collided with the desert's unforgiving nature before. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Finally, he reached the oasis, a small cluster of palms surrounded by boulders and sand. Normally, it was a place of quiet relief, a rare pocket of shade and water in the harsh expanse. Today, however, it felt different. A strange scent lingered in the air, one Alex couldn't immediately place, earthy, decayed, and oddly metallic. He crouched, inspecting the sand, and noticed irregular marks, almost like something heavy had been dragged across the ground. His flashlight swept over the area, illuminating the base of a massive Joshua tree. Its twisted branches arched toward the sky like the fingers of a skeleton, and the hollow at its base caught his attention. Something was inside. Alex's pulse quickened as he approached, the crunch of sand under his boots loud in the stillness. The hollow's entrance was partially obscured by dead branches and layers of compacted debris, unlike anything he'd seen left by wind or animals. This was deliberate. Someone or something had been trapped here, and not recently. Carefully, he began removing the debris, piece by piece. Each movement revealed more of the hollow's interior. His flashlight beam finally fell on the unimaginable. Skeletal remains, positioned as if seated together, facing the back wall. One skeleton had traces of a blue jacket still clinging to its frame. The other had faint remnants of hair. Between them lay a worn backpack, its tag still visible. T&M Daniels. Alex's stomach tightened. Tina and Mark Daniels, tourists who had disappeared 5 years ago during a planned hiking trip, were here, right in front of him, as if the desert itself had waited to reveal the truth. The memories of the original search flooded back. Helicopters sweeping over rock formations, search dogs scouring the washes, volunteers combing every inch of the park. Weeks of effort, and yet no sign of them, until now. Alex radioed Lena with a voice that trembled slightly. "Lena, you need to patch me through to the sheriff and the coroner's office. I found them." As he secured the scene with temporary markers, Alex crouched, observing the details. The couple's bodies had not been disturbed by scavengers. Their hands were interlaced and their legs drawn close, a posture that suggested comfort and fear intertwined. Nearby, a cracked smartphone lay buried partially in sand, a silent witness to the last moments of their lives. Alex recalled the details of their original itinerary. Tina and Mark had arrived for a 3-day trip in early October, eager to explore Joshua Tree's secluded trails. Experienced hikers from New Mexico, they had prepared carefully, their campsite pristine when last seen. Yet the desert's unpredictability had claimed them, hiding their fate from the world for half a decade. Alex stayed crouched by the hollow, the desert wind rustling the Joshua Tree's branches above like mournful whispers. The skeletal remains told a story, but it wasn't obvious at first glance. There were no signs of struggle, no broken bones, no visible trauma from animals or natural hazards. Everything suggested they had died in place, slowly, over time.
He remembered the storm reports from that October weekend 5 years ago. An unexpected late-season thunderstorm had swept through the area, bringing flash floods and high winds to parts of Joshua Tree. Search teams had combed the trails tirelessly, but the Daniels' scent had vanished near a rocky wash roughly 2 miles from their intended campsite, as if the desert itself had swallowed them whole. Alex's eyes lingered on the small backpack, the faded tag still readable. T&M Daniels. Inside were remnants of their prepared hike, water bottles, granola bars, a small first aid kit. Nothing suggested they had planned to vanish for more than a day. Their smartphone, though cracked, might hold some clues, but it was likely too degraded by time and exposure to be useful. Still, the possibility gnawed at him. Even a single photo or note could reveal their final hours. As Alex waited for backup, he thought of the original search. The park had been alive with helicopters slicing across the sky, search dogs straining on leashes, and volunteers spreading across every boulder, canyon, and sand dune. Every clue had been followed, every lead investigated. Yet the desert had concealed them with a cruel precision. The positioning of the skeletons told him one thing immediately. They had stayed together. Mark's arm rested protectively around Tina's shoulders, her hand resting lightly on his chest. They hadn't faced this alone. Somehow, even in the desert's brutal silence, they had clung to each other for comfort and courage. Alex's thoughts drifted to the human side of the tragedy. Tina's parents had flown from Albuquerque, frantic with worry. Mark's sister had left her work midweek, desperate to help. They had checked every news bulletin, called every ranger station, hoping for a miracle. And for 5 years, they had been left with nothing, not even closure. The hollow's interior revealed more details as Alex shone his light across the space. The sand and dirt had compacted into a hard floor, flattened where they had likely sat or slept. Deep scratches marred the wood's interior, gouges that suggested frantic attempts to move debris or claw a way out. The pile blocking the entrance had clearly been reinforced over time, accidentally sealing their refuge into a tomb. Alex felt a lump form in his throat. They had survived the initial storm, perhaps even more than a day, desperately hoping someone would come for them. The realization was suffocating. Helicopters had flown overhead, searchers had combed the desert within hours, yet the Daniels had been just meters from possible rescue. Every misplaced branch, every shift of sand had been a barrier between life and death. He crouched lower, tracing the scratch marks with a gloved hand. A pattern emerged. Simple marks etched deliberately. 3 parallel strokes in several places suggested they had been counting days. These weren't random. This was a desperate effort to mark time, a way to cling to the passing hours while trapped in the hollow. I could almost hear their thoughts. 1 more day. 2 more days. Please, someone find us. The coroner and sheriff's deputies arrived within the hour. Dr. Samantha Cross, a forensic anthropologist with years of experience in desert recoveries, moved methodically, photographing every angle before touching anything. Alex watched quietly, noting each action, trying to remain professional despite the emotional weight of the scene. I felt a lump form in my throat. 5 years, and they were so close to being found. Dr. Cross crouched beside the skeletal remains, gently lifting one arm to examine the positioning. "They died together," she said softly. "No signs of trauma. It's exposure, dehydration. But what stands out is the effort they made. They were conscious for days. Look at these marks." She pointed to deep gouges along the hollow's inner bark. These were deliberate. They weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to communicate, to mark time, to fight for every last moment. I could almost hear their thoughts. 1 more day. 2 more days. Please, someone find us. I radioed Lena again. "We need forensics and additional rangers to secure this site. Everything has to be documented. We're not just recovering bodies, we're reconstructing their final moments." As the sun slipped below the horizon, painting the desert in hues of crimson and gold, Alex took a step back. The weight of knowing, the full horror, pressed down on him. 5 years of unanswered questions, frantic searches, and hopeful prayers led to this. He knew the Daniels family would soon get closure, but the bitter truth of what they endured would be difficult to explain.
Every tree, every boulder, every shadow seemed heavier now. The desert was alive in a way Alex had never fully appreciated. Patient, indifferent, waiting for human error to meet its consequences. Small missteps, combined with nature's unforgiving hand, had transformed a momentary shelter into a permanent tomb. The rangers worked through the night, documenting, photographing, and marking the scene for forensic analysis. Alex remained by the hollow, occasionally brushing sand aside, trying to piece together the timeline in his mind. They had survived the storm's first night, but the next 2 days had broken them. Exhaustion, dehydration, and the inability to escape had culminated in this final, heart-wrenching tableau. By dawn, everything had been recorded, and the Daniels' remains were carefully transported for analysis. The desert was quiet again, but the story it had held for 5 years had finally emerged. Alex stood for a long moment, staring at the horizon. The wind whispered through the Joshua trees, as if carrying the echoes of a tragedy that had waited silently, patiently, for discovery. By mid-morning, the forensic team was fully set up around the Joshua Tree Hollow. Alex watched quietly as Dr. Cross and her assistants worked with meticulous precision, documenting every mark, every piece of debris, every subtle detail that could explain how Tina and Mark Daniels had survived and ultimately perished in the desert. The deeper examination of the hollow revealed harrowing evidence. Small depressions in the sand suggested they had alternated between sitting and lying down, trying to conserve energy while maintaining some semblance of comfort. Each scratch on the bark was deliberate, some deep enough to draw blood in life, indicating attempts to signal for help or perhaps to vent frustration and fear. Alex could almost feel the tension that must have filled those tiny moments, hours stretching endlessly while hope dwindled. Dr. Cross spoke quietly to her team. "These marks aren't random. Someone had to exert significant effort to carve them. They were conscious, alert, and aware of their situation for at least 2 full days. That's extraordinary under these conditions. Alex knelt beside her, studying the deep gouges. The 3-stroke marks appeared in a repeating pattern along the bark, almost like a desperate tally. It was a countdown of suffering, a record of time passing when every hour was a fight against dehydration and exhaustion. The coroner's preliminary report confirmed Alex's worst suspicions. Tina and Mark had died from exposure, compounded by dehydration. Their bodies had been remarkably intact given the harsh desert environment, a grim reminder of the slow, relentless power of nature. There was no sign of violence, no predators had disturbed them, no external factor had directly caused their deaths, just the cruel arithmetic of survival. Alex felt a hollow ache in his chest. They had been so close to rescue. He could imagine helicopters flying overhead, search teams calling out, volunteers scanning every crevice and canyon. Yet the positioning of branches and the compacted debris had created a barrier just enough to conceal them from view. Their sanctuary had turned into a tomb, the desert indifferent to human suffering, patient and immutable. A small notebook, water-damaged but legible, had survived in the hollow. It contained notes from Tina, careful reminders to ration water, small messages to Mark, desperate pleas that someone would find them. One page bore the words, "We are together, we stay together, please don't let this be the end." The handwriting, faint and trembling, revealed the slow erosion of hope, the gradual acknowledgement that rescue might never come. Alex's thoughts drifted to the psychological toll. Being trapped in a confined space in unbearable heat during the day and plummeting temperatures at night could shatter even the strongest minds. Yet they had clung to each other, providing comfort when the desert offered none. That alone spoke to the depth of their bond. The team continued carefully mapping the scene. Fallen branches that had partially blocked the entrance were measured and photographed. Some of the larger limbs bore scratch marks on the inside, as if Tina and Mark had tried to lift or push them aside. Nature had conspired against them with perfect timing. High winds and flash floods had shifted debris in the hours after the storm, sealing the hollow. The rangers and forensic team concluded that the Daniels had likely survived 3 full days inside that hollow. 3 days of conscious effort, hope, and endurance, completely unseen by the world outside. Alex felt a wave of anger and sorrow. Not anger at the desert, which had simply existed on its terms, but at the randomness, the cruel symmetry of fate. These were experienced hikers, careful planners, yet even their skills could not overcome the unforgiving combination of weather and geography. The desert did not discriminate. It merely demanded respect and preparation. Dr. Cross held up a small fragment of a cracked smartphone. "This may give us some insight," she said. "Even minimal data could tell us how they tracked time, what they attempted to do, if they tried to contact anyone." Alex nodded. It was a long shot. 5 years of exposure had probably destroyed much of the device, but it represented a final thread of connection to the outside world. As the team worked, Alex stepped back to reflect. He thought of all the cases he had encountered over the past decade. Hikers lost in washes, climbers stranded on unmarked paths, and families who had underestimated the desert's dangers. Most disappearances weren't the result of crime or violence. They were the sum of small mistakes magnified by extreme conditions. One wrong turn, one delayed decision, one underestimated storm could prove fatal. The Daniels story was no different. They had done nearly everything right. They packed carefully, stayed on known trails, and had experience in similar environments. Yet nature had intervened, and the thin margin between survival and tragedy had vanished in a matter of hours. Their deaths were not heroic in the traditional sense, but the endurance they demonstrated was staggering. Even in the face of inevitable collapse, they had tried, they had fought, and they had left traces that would tell their story. By afternoon, the scene was thoroughly documented. The hollow's interior, the branches blocking the entrance, the scratch marks, the small possessions, all evidence painstakingly recorded. Alex lingered, staring at the spot where they had died. For 5 years, the Daniels had been missing, a mystery that weighed on every ranger, every search team, every family member who had hoped against hope. Now the truth lay bare, a story of love, endurance, and heartbreak, written not in words, but in desperate survival etched into wood and sand. Alex radioed the command center. "We have everything recorded. The scene is secure. The Daniels' remains are ready for transport. Families will be notified shortly." His voice was steady, but inside he felt the familiar ache of witnessing a tragedy compounded by lost time. 5 years of uncertainty had ended in the stark reality of death, a tragedy both natural and unavoidable. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the desert in muted reds and golds, Alex felt a somber resolve settle over him. Lessons from this case would not be ignored. Emergency caches, clearer trail markers, and updated safety information would be implemented to prevent future tragedies. The desert might remain indifferent, but humans could learn, adapt, and respect its power. The story of Tina and Mark Daniels, though horrifying in its conclusion, would serve a greater purpose. Their endurance, their desperate attempts to survive, and their ultimate fate would teach future visitors the hidden dangers of Joshua Tree, and perhaps save lives that might otherwise be lost to the desert's patient cruelty. Alex turned his gaze toward the distant horizon, the wind rustling the Joshua trees once more. The desert remained vast, silent, and unyielding, but now its secrets had been uncovered and its lesson had been learned. The Daniels families received the news later that evening. Tears, shock, and a quiet relief mingled together as Alex spoke gently over the phone. He said, "They were together. They didn't suffer alone." For 5 years, the unanswered questions had haunted them. Now there was closure, painful but undeniable. 3 weeks later, the family returned to Joshua Tree for a small memorial near Lost Palms. They planted a desert willow, delicate yet resilient, to honor Tina and Mark. Rangers, volunteers, and close relatives shared stories, held hands, and remembered the couple not as victims of the desert, but as people who faced its challenges together. Alex watched quietly, the weight of the discovery still heavy, but tempered by the knowledge that the lessons would endure. Emergency caches were installed, trail markers updated, and visitor safety programs improved, all inspired by Tina and Mark's tragic story. In the quiet of the desert, the Joshua trees stood tall, indifferent, yet majestic. The Daniels story became part of the park's legacy, a testament to love, endurance, and the unforgiving reality of nature. And for Alex, the discovery brought a bittersweet sense of peace. The mystery was solved, the families had closure, and the desert had revealed its truth, harsh but fair. As the sun set behind distant boulders, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson, the desert whispered its eternal lesson. Survival is fragile. Mistakes have consequences, and sometimes even the most prepared can fall victim to nature's patient, relentless hand. But through understanding, preparation, and respect, lives could be saved and tragedies transformed into wisdom for those who follow.